Hey everybody, welcome to another episode, a very special episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan C.P. Steele. I will be your nerd today, but I won't be your only nerd today, because today, or rather earlier this week, I recorded an interview slash Q&A session with a special guest, Alex Kanous of Resnova Games, the I was the owner, proprietor, chief member of the game, of that game company, but also kind of the lead gumption behind bringing Warzone back from the limbo in which its license floated off to a few years ago. But before we get into that, now I'm going to take almost no time here to intro this, for the sheer fact that the interview and the Q&A is long. This is a long episode. You probably saw that when you went to go click on it. So I am going to make sure that this is brief, because I don't want to keep you guys too long, and I know that this is going to be a video that a lot of people are going to want to dig their, sink their teeth into. So I wanted to go ahead and just sort of real quick overview about the week in Bryan. It's been another week of the summer of solitude, where we're stuck indoors and I don't get a chance to play all the games that I would like to play, aside from being on the Xbox, yeah, it's just a lot of spycraft writing and writing on the Shadowrun novel. Trying my best to make some things put together for Big Child on a business level. They've got a couple of really cool new oversized, but I should say oversized, different scale models from their Tales from Cobberland and Black Sailors kind of genre, that's kind of Storm Coast genre that they've got, that you should check out. I'll put like always, I'll put the address in the description of the video. But yeah, other than that, it's been a pretty tame it's been a pretty tame week. A lot of work, trying to stay cool. Got my air conditioning fixed, so feels great here in the studio now. I'm not dying of sweat like I was a couple weeks ago. But yeah, no, it's been good. It's been solid. We're making a lot of forward progress on various projects. Getting some painting done. Recently started a TikTok under at the Professional Nerd, and getting some followers there, and it's fun. That app is fun. It's I don't know if I want to call it like the next big thing, but it's definitely fun. And I'm putting up some fun videos over there. I'm hoping to get maybe some hobby content on there soon. Me painting some models, that kind of thing. Speaking of painting models, I drew in a couple of commissions last week, so we get to paint some Dust stuff, a couple of Lord of the Rings models, and some more Kingdom Death stuff. So hopefully, if I get my hobby rig up and running, which reminds me of a shout out that I have got to give. Before I go and set us ever up for the Q&A, I've got to give a shout out to Russell Rosen, or Rosen. I always pronounce it Rosen. I could be wrong. He heard on the episode last week about my laptop taking a spill, taking a dive, and breaking. Well, apparently Russell works for or owns a computer repair company in Arizona, and he offered to go ahead and like extend some goodwill and some merriment amongst the fans of Tales of a Professional Nerd, and offered to fix the laptop. So it is off. My laptop is off being looked at, or currently maybe in transit to being looked at. But either way, my hat is off to you, Russell. Thank you so much. You guys have done between the mystery Seraptech and the mystery Necromunda figs, and now repairing my computer when I can't set up my hobby rig without it. You guys have really, you viewers have just knocked it out of the park, reminding me why I love the gaming industry and why I love the good side of gamers. Because every day on Facebook and every day on Instagram and YouTube and all these things, we see all of these negative things. We see all of this dark stuff that's happening. People that are boycotting certain shows or boycotting companies, or companies that put their foot in their mouths, or Facebook friends that post things and you just go, what are you insane? And get themselves blocked in a heartbeat. Family members that say things that you're like, man, I can't believe that you would, that this is the hill you want to die on. And all of that stuff happens to us constantly. It is so nice to have you subscriber base, you viewer base, you fan base that I know, although I'm sure there's probably instances where things have come out of my mouth that you're like, oh, Bryan, or maybe a game that I'm working for that you're like, what the heck's that for? Or maybe even just a matter of, we have a difference of opinion on something minor. But overall, we all love games. We all love being able to escape reality and get away from things. And to a certain degree, some of us, we love making those games, and we love making it so it's possible for others can escape reality. And we want to set the stage for people to be able to enjoy themselves in dark times. And so I am reminded whenever something like this happens, I am reminded just how good people can be, and it warms my heart to know that there are people out there like Russell, there are people out there like my mystery benefactors from earlier on. And thank you. From me to you, thank you so much. That means, you have no idea, that means the world to me and my family, to have you guys help, even in your tiniest ways, in the smallest of ways. It is something that helps us keep our heads looking toward the light and looking up out of these sort of negative surroundings that we happen to be in sometimes. So all of that set aside, let's go ahead and pull up the video from a couple days ago, when I brought Alex on to talk about Warzone, because that's what you guys really are here to see. Let's get that started. So here we go. Hey everybody, I would like to introduce you to Alex Kanous of Resnova Games. Alex, say hi to everybody.
Hi everybody, how you doing? It's Bryan. Thank you for having me. It's this is my first time, I think, being on camera on the internet. So welcome to my first time.
Oh, well, we'll treat you gentle. Everything will be well. No, I'm glad that you're able to come on. It's easily still my highest viewed video, where we accidentally it was a trickle leak. Like, it wasn't an accident, but it wasn't expected to be the deluge that it was when we said that we were doing Warzone, that we were bringing Warzone back. And it's still my highest viewed video, period. And I get the occasional message on Facebook or whatnot from people that are super psyched about what we're doing. And so I'm super happy to have you on the show, and get us a chance to kind of tell people a little bit about what's going on, and frankly, kind of keep them excited and jazzed while the engine keeps turning, like we keep moving. Before we get into kind of the meat of the matter, I would love to kind of have you share with the audience kind of where you come from in gaming, and they know all about me. They've been listening to me for years. So let's hear a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, 40-something-year-old attorney in Michigan, a lifelong gamer, right? I think we can kind of say that, for pretty much everybody who takes a crack at any sort of game design or game publishing. But like a lot of gaming aficionados, I'd spent years and years and years compiling all sorts of ideas for systems, right? Games I was currently playing that I wanted to modify, games that I wanted to create from scratch because I felt they, were going to scratch an itch that I didn't think that any published games currently were doing. And so that proceeded for a number of years. Like I said, I think with most of us, and then eventually a couple of us stuck on a project that we have been tinkering around with for a bit, and that's the game. Some of you might have seen our posts for Dungeon Slayer. And so Dungeon Slayer was our first product that we decided, okay, this is the one that we're going to take, and we're going to try to go from beyond just a collection of notes into something bigger, something that we could put out there, put our name on it, and say this is our contribution to the gaming community. And so we've been working on that for a bit. We've exhibited at PAX Unplugged, had booths for 2 years, shown it at Gen Con, Origins, and really, unfortunately, this spring was supposed to be the Kickstarter release for it. And, we all know that we're all a little bit preoccupied with something.
Everything kind of got set back a year. There's a lot of companies that have still managed to do their big releases, but like most of the smaller and the indie companies have all kind of clutched to their chest and be like, all right, we're going to wait 6 months and see what happens.
Yep. No, absolutely. And especially for somebody like, or an organization like Resnova, right? We're small. And when I say we're small, I'm small. Resnova is an organization that is a publisher that's specifically run to be as lean and efficient as possible, right? So core design work comes from me, and then I've got a group of individuals like Bryan, talented professionals out there who I work with on. Yeah, exactly. A little bit of flattery, right, to get on your show. But talented professionals that I work with for things like graphic design, concept art, sculpting, and then the eventual publishing and distribution. And the point of that, right, is to try to limit some of the overhead that really causes a problem for new companies when they're trying to get up and running. And I realize I'm not reinventing the wheel by saying any of this stuff, but it's the model that we chose to adopt. So Resnova was created with the singular purpose of publishing Dungeon Slayer. And then probably a year and a half ago, I started making inquiries into the status of the Warzone license. Warzone is a game that Mutant Chronicles, the entire property, the entire associated intellectual property has been massively important to me since I stumbled across it in the mid-90s. I'm still wearing a Target Games.
Oh, wow.
Right? So, this is a long-running passion of mine. And so I've seen the license go through a few hands, and every single time it found itself without a home, I was never in a position to do anything about it. Now Resnova is in a position to do something about that. And while obviously we are disheartened to see the license fall on hard times, companies that make an attempt, ended up not working out for whatever reason. We appreciated all of the effort that everyone did beforehand because it really helped keep the license, the imagery, the story alive.
And it kept the fans still kind of like liquid. They're still out there, and they're telling their friends, and it's still an active plot. There's still
exactly
that genre has not completely collapsed.
That's exactly right. And so really what Resnova wants to do is just continue the availability of this as a product. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more as we go further on, but a product that really has a great deal of respect and adherence to kind of that core imagery that defined Mutant Chronicles, Doom Trooper, Siege of the Citadel, Blood Beret, Fury of the Klansmen, Dark Eden, and Warzone back in the 90s, right? The stuff that grabbed me as I walked through the store. That's what I want to see again.
I was gonna say, I know that it was in that 90s era, the Target Games era, that I first saw it. That me and a couple of my buddies, we were in that kind of downtick from our 40K swell in high school, and we were looking for something else to grab our attention. And I remember the first time I saw the Biogiant was one of the very first models that I was like, okay, first off, that's enormous.
Yep.
And second off, it's a thing, like it's a walking critter. And if you go back to like 40K in that era, even the greater demons were only like 4 inches tall. There were big tanks, but generally speaking, unless you got into like the wildly weird resin stuff,
yep,
there wasn't any big monsters. And I saw that Biogiant, even though it was just one giant lump of resin, but he was sitting on the box at the Valparaiso Pet and Hobby, and I was like, yeah, I need that guy. And
yep,
that was where we grabbed that, and then slowly sort of acquired bits and bobs, and then realized, oh, hey, no, there's actually a full-blown game, like a much bigger game than expected. And that's how me and my close friends, we were running tournaments at the university here in Lafayette, like renting out rooms at the university. And I want to say that like our biggest event at the time, I want to say got up to about 18 people, which is pretty big for that time. You didn't get huge. There wasn't a huge tournament scene for any game outside of like conventions. And so we had people like that would travel up from Indianapolis to play with us, and we had a blast. And then it kind of, for us anyway, it sort of gave way to other skirmish games. Like we fell back into Necromunda, and it kind of morphed into our attentions were turned elsewhere. And then shortly after that, I got my job at Privateer, and that meant that suddenly all my free time is spent playing War Machine.
Yep.
And reality set in, and I just didn't get a chance to get back to it. And it's such a deep and awesome setting and license that as soon as you mentioned it to me, that you were bringing this back, I was hooked. I was in. Like there was there didn't need to be a whole lot of negotiations on the business side of things, because I wanted to be part of this.
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm very personally thankful for Resnova doing, kind of going into that sort of nostalgic dive. I mentioned this on one of the Q&As on Facebook, that I actually didn't know that Protoss as a company had Warzone. I didn't know that it had come back post. Was it Excelsior? Is that who?
Excelsior
for them, or technically Fantasy Flight, but
right. Yeah, I mean, Fantasy Flight really wasn't making Warzone. I mean, I realize it's a minor distinction, but they were making a Mutant Chronicles miniatures game. But yeah, so really, in terms of miniature releases, it was Excelsior right after Target went under. Fantasy Flight had the license for
that. That was pretty much the last time that I had heard anything about Warzone, until I saw one of my friends bought me a new Nephirite from Protoss and was like, "Hey, check it out! You used to play these guys, didn't you?" And I was like, "Oh wow, that's cool!" And before I even had a chance to even think about getting into Warzone Resurrection, it had already kind of moved into that sort of out of print style game. Protoss was kind of in the decline kind of thing.
Right.
So I'm personally, I'm chuffed to be part of it, hopefully coming back into everybody's onto the game tables, even in a small amount. I'm excited to be part of that movement.
And Bryan, I think that's a good segue. I mean, one of the things that I definitely want to reiterate, because I mean the communities exist, they continue to exist on Facebook, on Instagram, forms of social media because they've got versions of the game that they are still playing, right, and they love. And so I know that we've seen a bunch of references to this, and one of the things I want to point out, right, is Res Nova is not looking to create the ultimate version of Warzone that we're going to tell you this is the version you should play. We're going to produce a game because, you know, Bryan and I have got you and I have got a really cool set of ideas for a mechanic or for gameplay. But Res Nova is also going to produce a line of figures, and the figures ultimately, we don't care what version of the game you play. We want you to put these figures on the table. We want you to put whatever figures you have on the table. Use your Target Games era metal, you know, from Mark Copplestone for our version of Warzone. It doesn't matter. The idea is creating yet another product for people to be able to enjoy this setting, this rich IP in. If you decide that you love our game and you love our figures and this is what you want to play and you want to, you know, take that to every convention and show all your buddies, that's awesome. But again, for me, this is at its core, this is a passion project, but it's a passion project that has a fair amount of you know, business acumen thrown at it in order to make sure that it's not a passion project that flames out. So sorry, that was a good time, I think, to just quickly throw that plug in there. So
well, he can plug it that way all he wants, but I'm telling you guys that you are going to love it, and it's going to be your favorite game. So.
Oh, there's no question. There's no question. I've enjoyed playing it a ton already. It just playtest forms.
So when we talked about bringing you on here as a guest to chit chat and the like, I asked the Warzone community and my fan base and a couple of Twitter questions, which I'm not even sure how that happened because I didn't add it to Twitter. Like, so somebody on Twitter is a Warzone fan and they used that as a way to get a hold of me instead of the thread. But hey, you know, do what you got to do.
Yep,
I'm also on TikTok now.
I am not.
My buddy Rick from Rick Rolls America got me sucked into it. It's addictive. It is. Whoever made that app, they knew exactly what they're doing, and it is very, very addictive, and it's got a still a growing gaming following. There's like a whole bunch of D&D content on there. A lot of people who are acting, because it's in little 1-minute chunks, so it's people acting like their characters for a minute, and you know, that sort of thing. I put on a bunch of hobby stuff from when I'm painting, you know, that kind of thing. It's goofy, but I digress. No, we had asked for people, knowing that you were going to be on here and that we would be able to kind of double barrel some of these topics. We asked people to give us questions for today to turn this into kind of a little bit of a not a formal Q&A, but a way for them to hopefully get some of their questions answered and us to maybe talk out loud to get some of our ideas out into the world. So maybe they'll be able to understand us a little better than the text.
Absolutely.
And so I gave it 2 weeks, technically 2 weeks tomorrow. And we got a bunch of really, really good questions. I have them all like color coded. Yes, which ones are super prioritized and which ones are, I'm very organized, which no one will say again out loud. But we got a lot of really good questions, and we got several questions from people that when their names popped up in the thread, I never realized that they played Warzone, or that they were even remotely involved with the license. One name in particular, who's actually going to start things off. I contacted him away from the Q&A, and I was like, I didn't know that you were a fan. And he's like, I'm a fan of all things gaming. And I'm like, all right, that's cool enough. All right, we'll take a look at that.
You bet.
But yeah, we got a lot of really good questions. Now, for the people who did ask questions, and if yours did not come up, it is either because when I was going through and truncating the list, your question either was really close to something that someone else had already asked, so it kind of I assume that the topic is going to kind of meld together, and we'll probably give you that information, or it was a question that I knew we did not have an answer to. And not we as in Resnova, or we as in Bryan and Alex, as in it's still vaporware. Like, it's just, we have not covered that topic at all. And I didn't want one of our questions to be, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. And then move on, so if anybody did have any questions that you're like, but I asked this question and I didn't hear an answer, to someone else's question earlier that was similar, it's probably because we didn't have an actual answer for you yet. And hopefully, as time moves forward, you'll see some more answers. You'll see some more kind of cool stuff as things come along. I know eventually as we get them, I think that it'll be really cool to start sharing art and the like, and be able to kind of show off some neat stuff as we go. Let's go ahead and dig in and get these started, because I'm sure some of these are going to be quick answers and others are going to be more of a conversational element.
Sure, you bet.
So our first question actually comes from Gregoire. I will butcher his last name every time. It's Gregoire from Dust 1947. Yep. He asks, how did you take the heritage of an infamous brand while modernizing it towards a less crunchy time? And I believe, because again, he's very elegant in how he writes, I think he means it's not, most games that are coming out these days are far more streamlined. They're far more, you see, they're aimed at a looser rule set than it is, 150 pages worth of rules. Everything's got, 3 different ways to do it. The time of advanced squad leader is over. That game no longer is played by people, anyone less than 50 years old. And if you are an advanced squad leader out there, I do not mean to alienate you, but your game is really old. It's old. But I think that's what he means is, now he says an infamous brand, and you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah, no, so I mean, and right, I think any passionate fan of Mutant Chronicles and Warzone properties has got different emotional feelings when they think about the history of the game. But I generally push back strongly against the idea that the property itself is infamous or is tainted or is damaged, as we've seen in some of the questions. The property continues to come back because people, right? It's not, people aren't bringing it back because they believe that there's some secret cash cow that has yet to be milked. They bring it back because they want to see it back. And so if people are saying that it's tainted or damaged because of the fact that it's been associated with companies who have struggled at times, I can't see a single instance where Mutant Chronicles or Warzone brought a company down, right? It's not a product that was doing great and then suddenly was not doing great, and therefore a company failed or ceased to exist anymore. Now, it doesn't change the fact that that's still a perspective that's out there.
Yeah.
And so one of Resnova's goals, one of our primary obligations, is going to be to demonstrate to the fan base, to the potential customers of this game, that we're in it for the long haul, right? That we will be here producing this as long as we are capable. And Resnova, I mean, like I said, we've got Dungeon Slayer in the works right now. We'll have Warzone. We have at least one other project that we're already starting to look into developing. This isn't we're not a one-trick pony, where, again, Warzone could do anything to us as a company.
Yeah.
So in regards to the idea of it being infamous or damaged, that's our perspective. We wouldn't be doing this if we thought this was some license, some property that carried baggage with it that was automatically going to cause failure. We're not silly people. We've made the appropriate business decisions, and we know we can do something with this.
Well, I think this also goes back to you mentioned earlier about, feel free to use your old models, play the game that you want to play, that kind of thing. But I also want, as I've reminded several people on Facebook and otherwise, is if you enjoy something that a company makes, support the company. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use your amazingly painted models from 10 years ago. But if something comes out and you go, man, that's pretty cool, think about it also from a standpoint of, I need to if I want more cool stuff to keep happening, you've got to be able to support the company that's making what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And loyalty to a something that's 15 years old is one thing, but you still have to kind of keep in mind that if you don't want new things to happen, you need the new people to also continue to be able to be supported.
Yep.
And so that's why I think that's part of the infamous brand. There's several things that have happened. I personally, I was told when I took over Dark Age back when I was at CMON, I was told that this license had 6 months to live. That if I basically had 6 months to show that this was going to be a thing, or we're going to find me something else to work on because it's a lost cause. And 3 years later, we were 400% positive as far as sales went. It just takes you have to kind of set that stuff aside and shake it off and go, it doesn't matter what happened in the past. Let's move forward.
Yep.
And I
think that's absolutely accurate.
And I think that's something that you at Resnova are thankfully, you are not trying to cling to what might be viewed as a design-based anchor. You're not trying to revisit someone else's version of this. This is your own thing, and you're taking this awesome setting, and you're kind of running with your own flag. And I think people are going to recognize that very fast.
Yep. I hope so. I mean, that is absolutely the goal. And I mean, and to the second part of Greg's question there about a less crunchy time, to the extent that we are talking about rules. I mean, one of the things I would point out was that Warzone, part of its innovation in the 90s was its small scale and its that alternating activation thing, right? Which completely changed the way the game was played. And that's still, whether you believe alternating activations are a necessity, whether they're now an outdated novelty, whatever, there are still a lot of systems, right, who still don't even incorporate that type of mechanic. So talking about learning from contemporary design, I think Warzone is already starting from a slightly more advanced position in terms of design philosophy and design maturity. And between the work that you and I have been doing, we're taking that further. I mean, again, the work that you had done with Privateer Press and on Dark Age, all of those things very much color what we've been doing. Dark Age in particular, Dark Age is the spiritual successor to Warzone, right? It was written early on by a guy who was associated with Warzone. It uses a lot of the same base.
A lot of feel there that feels very similar. Yeah,
absolutely. And then from there, I mean, you and I have both played every single modern miniature game, out there. So we're aware of what people are doing. We're aware of the types of mechanics that have grabbed people and have turned systems successful. Yeah, we absolutely are taking that all into account.
Yeah. There's another question that comes up a little bit later that discusses some kind of the new agey feel of mechanics, and I want when we get to that question, I definitely want to dive in on that one a little bit, because the way that they word the question is very, very weighted. It is a very particular way that they chose their words perfectly, and it set me up. When I read the question, I was just like, oh, I've got an answer for you. Our next question comes from Jameson Camplin. And he asks, so what factions are there to choose from, and can we get a little bit of lore into said factions? Now, I don't think that we need to necessarily go super deep into the lore today. I will, I'm promising you now, I will dedicate an episode completely to Warzone lore at some point. So that way we can get, I will give each faction like 15-20 minutes to talk about what they're all about when we're a little further down the road. But yeah, right now, I'd rather not spend a half an hour because again, this is a deep, very, very heavy license. There's a lot of lore back there.
Yep.
But the factions there to choose from, that's something we can probably talk about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So to start the game, we're looking at the 5 core corporate factions, right? So Imperial, Bauhaus, Cybertronic, Capital, Mishima. I think I just rattled off all 5.
Yeah.
So the 5 corporations, each one of them will be represented. Dark Legion will be represented by Elgaroth. And there's a reason for that, right? I mean, not only is Elgaroth just the most warlike of all of the Dark Legion apostles, and thus would be the most likely to engage with a corporate force, they're also the ones, if you look at all of the RPG background and the like, have all of the cohorts, right? The majority of the infiltrators come from cults that worship Elgaroth. Elgaroth is the apostle that produces a majority of the techno-organic war machines and that even other apostles use. So the plan is to focus on Elgaroth to begin with. And so that's going to be, at least as of right now, and of course, things like, what are if we do a Kickstarter, what does the Kickstarter look like at the time? Just how far along are we in miniatures production? Those are all going to dictate exactly what the initial release is.
Yeah.
But the initial release for sure is going to be those 5 and Elgaroth. And in terms of lore, Bryan, at least that he'll touch base on it more. But one of the things that, again, to be really clear, right, we're going back to Mutant Chronicles role-playing game 2nd edition / Warzone 1st edition, right? That is the snapshot we're taking. This isn't a retcon. We're going to that period of time that was represented by those games when Warzone launched.
And I think that's also, for the most part, that's kind of the age of heroes for Warzone 2. Like that's where like the where you got your most kind of the beginning of the swell, the arc of everything's kind of coming together. The badness is officially there, and it's starting to. I have that image in my head. There's one of the cover pieces that's got like the Algaroth Nephirite kind of disembodied head floating in the background, and it's got I don't know if is it Max Steiner kind of standing on a pile of dead undead legionnaires, and he's like shooting down into the crowd. That's the kind of era that I feel is the most Mutant Chronicles. Maybe not necessarily the most Warzone, but definitely the most of the like the thick of the setting is at that kind of the rise of the Dark Legion and and like where the symmetry has started to kind of stitch together and the cultists are crawling out of the woodwork. That's I dig that. Which actually leads us right into the next question. Jesse Thomas asks, what are you doing with the timeline and existing lore? Is this a reboot or just a polish? And I think you just answered that. It's kind of a snapshot in time,
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. There is, unlike other long-lived properties who have had numerous people touch on them, there is nobody who manages Mutant Chronicles or Warzone canon, right? There's nobody who says this is canonical, this is not. And so, when you start looking at what Modiphius has done, introducing a new sort of corporation in the White Star group on Dark Eden, or if you look at what Protoss did, where they advanced the timeline, and you saw new troop types come out for the Brotherhood and the corporations based upon that advancement. Those represent 2 actually divergent paths, right? So it's hard for us to come in now and say, well, we're going to just continue on that, because there is no singular forward story. And number 2, those stories also belong to other people, right?
Yeah.
The Mutant Chronicles 3rd edition, that story arc progression, that belongs to Modiphius. And the the Proto stuff for Warzone Resurrection, that belongs to Protos and Marshall, right, with all the work that he did writing that. So we don't, number one, we don't feel like it's our place to build on that. But then again, because this is this nostalgically prompted project, the desire is to go back to this period of time. And yeah, I'm sure that we will slowly advance things as the game progresses, just because an evolving narrative is engaging, and it gives us a reason for creating new troop types.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, exactly what you said. We're gonna go back to that point, that really emblematic imagery that Paul Bonner and Parente and the like created, and that's what we're gonna run with.
Our next two questions come from Dave Hartman. The first one is well, I guess a multifaceted question. Are you intending on toning down to make it not quite so white guy Eurocentric, and can you do that without coming across as just simply pandering? I have so one of the things that we did with Dark Age is and I hate to keep going back to Dark Age, is just this, that's the kind of benchmark for a lot of the decisions that I made in the past, to kind of hopefully show people, hey, we've done this before. One of the things that Dark Age did is it was very, very bubblegum, buxom lass.
Right.
A lot of that Brahm art is a whole lot of naked. And we got a little bit of flack early on because they were like, you're really it's a kind of a misogynistic art feel. And it took us a solid year of production to basically point out that while, yes, there are definitely a lot of art pieces that need altering, toned down quite a bit, but we were also introducing new characters that were women that were not of model shape. We introduced an entire group of people that were almost like muscular overweight. Like they were all kind of Kingpin style. There were in the narrative, there were women that were in control of great swaths of troops, and not because they're just sexy and that's what happens. It was because they were amazing women warriors. And I think that with Warzone, especially because we are kind of going back into a different chunk of that time, as far as not making it white guy Eurocentric, that's kind of up to us with our art and the painting and the hobby.
Yep.
Because we're not going to be changing the story. But even then, there's definitely a lot of diversity in the heroes that will appear in the stories, in the fiction. That's they were there before. But there's definitely some instances where, if we want to be true to the license, the Imperial Wolfbanes are that kind of Celtic, that sort of Celtic Viking mixed breed feel, but it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a bunch of female warriors in there. That we can't have those of different racial heritage. It's just, this is almost like it's not a cultural following. It's you've learned how to be this sort of Celtic warrior, whether or not you're a white guy, black guy, Asian guy, doesn't matter.
Well, right. And I think that's, I think you're absolutely right. We're talking about, corporations that have this, nationalistic identity, but we're also talking about that identity projected far into the future, right? So right now, if you were to say an imperial, like what would comprise the heritage of those that are part of the Imperial Corporation? All you need to do is look at the population of Great Britain to realize it is not a monogamous, or not monogamous,
They all have lots of wives. No,
yes,
it's a new thing. It's a new thing we're doing.
Right. No, it's not a homogenous population by any means whatsoever. So absolutely, between artwork, between sculpts, we absolutely are you are going to see people of vast variety of heritages and ancestries reflected in the artwork for any corporation. There's absolutely zero reason that any corporation should have such a strong stereotypical identity in terms of the people who comprise them.
Yeah,
we absolutely are not going to follow the same path as I think what this commentator was asking about, which is this white Eurocentric. I mean, we're not going to change the fact that the corporations, right, are Bauhaus and Imperial. So you have two of them that are very Eurocentric.
Yeah. Well, but and I also
who's within this.
Well, and I also think that there's an entire Asian themed corporation, but it's gonna also go both ways. There's gonna be a bunch of non-Asian people that work for Mishima.
Absolutely.
Like it isn't like that's gonna be the only way that you can work here,
right?
The stipulation is, are you human? All right, cool, you can have a job.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. And I mean, and to the follow-up part of his question there about pandering, I think, as a publisher, we're going to create a game that shows people of other ethnicities. Again, like I said, we're going to have figures that are going to allow you to represent different individuals within your units.
Yep.
And we're going to leave it at that. It's something that we strongly believe in, is that level of representation. But we're not going to tell you how to build your figures or what to do with them. Because I think that the pandering thing is a concern. If you're doing it to be performative, right? You want to, hey, look at what we're doing. Aren't we part of some sort of movement? And that's not our goal. Our goal is to simply make figures that represent everybody, and that people can put on the tabletop as representative of themselves or of anybody else that they want to be representative of. And the artwork, we very much are going to make sure it's representative of the diversity that you see in all of the real world analogs for these Mutant Chronicle factions. And there's some stuff that we're going to have to think about when it comes to less about the ethnic diversity and more about the gender diversity, because units like the Étoiles Mortantes, right, or the Morning Wolves, these are all female warbands. And okay, I mean, I understand some of the lore behind them, but part of there's also just a base question of, why are only women allowed in a particular unit, right? If they're experts at this, with the Étoiles Mortantes, right, they're the experts of infiltration and assassination. Why would you make that only female? And conversely, right, I realized in part, they only sculpted a handful of models for each unit type, and so they tended to be male. But like, why are all of our hussars male?
Exactly.
Well, again, one of the goals is going to be with the way that we're going to produce figures, or at least that we're intending to produce figures. It's going to be a very easy thing to make your figure female or male. So again, we're intending to move away from white guy ethnocentric, and we really hope that what we're doing does not come across as pandering.
Awesome. Dave's second question is, what is the intended realism level, both lore-wise and game mechanics? All right, I can cover the lore-wise. I mean, we're not really changing the lore. The lore is you've got evil math-using demons coming from the planet Nero. I don't know how realistic you can get with that, but we're not going to tone it down and make it cartoony either. Like, our stories are going to be Mutant Chronicle feel,
right?
And then game mechanics wise, one of the things earlier we were talking about the kind of modernizing the rules. I think that realism, as long as it doesn't make it so the game is hard to play, because there's a certain point, there's like kind of that kind of like sweet spot between, my guys are doing things that is cool and based off of the terrain and based off of, you know, things that the actual little miniature can't do, that the rules say I can. And then there's that where you push it just a little too far, and then now suddenly you've got 17 counters next to every model. And well, it's realistic because I know that he has the flu in this game. I rolled it earlier. He has the flu. He's -1 to this, but if he wounds you in close combat, you get the flu for the next game. Yep. You know, like there's a point. You know, there's that sweet spot, and I think, me personally, I like a simpler game as long as the rules are tight, and hopefully that we're doing a good job of getting to that point where we want, you know, you were talking about earlier alternating activations. I am a huge fan of alternating activations in games. I'm actually surprised that 40K and fantasy and stuff have not gotten on board yet, personally, because it gives you more of a that back and forth feel. The game, the war, the battle is always moving. And then you take that to the next level with game systems that have reactions and things of the sort that allow you to not only react to do your stuff, but also you have like a little bit to do when the other guys. You're never just sitting there sitting on your thumbs.
Right.
And I have that is one of my least favorite parts about certain games, is that I do my stuff and then I sit for half an hour while you do your stuff.
Yep.
And I think that everyone is going to hopefully be pretty happy with the kind of the sweet spot that we found of keeping you engaged and keeping you, I mean, to say keeping you watching the game. Right. Because I've been at tournaments where someone's like, hey, do your stuff. This guy's going to record how many of my things you kill. I'm going to go get a sandwich.
Yep.
And that's awful. You know, the general should not leave the battle to get a sandwich.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, obviously, right. I mean, if that's the kind of game that somebody wants, then we're not going to be creating that game for them.
Yeah.
In terms of realism, again, all you have to do is look at the artwork that's inspired the direction we're going, right? And you know, when you see you know, Mitch Hunter and you know, Crenshaw standing on a pile of skulls in the middle of, you know, water somewhere with guns pointed at each other. I mean, what I've always described, this is Mutant Chronicles is a 1980s action adventure movie with a whole heck of a lot of you know, mythos and dark horror kind of overlaying it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's an action hero movie. It's an action hero game. Now, what that means in gameplay, right, is that we want you to be able to do cool things, right? I think that's our primary drive when designing a set of rules, is we want your guys to do cool things on the tabletop. Now, that doesn't mean superhero level powers. We want there to be a ton of opportunity to engage in tactical thought and make decisions that make sense. But again, all of it is from this kind of quick, fluid design.
Yeah.
That your guys feel like, every single one of them feel like they're doing something.
Owen Rarauer asks, are any of the tactics card mechanics from Warzone Resurrection returning, and is the game still D20 based? I feel confident that I can cover this. The game is still D20 based. That is almost kind of a Warzone staple, I think, at this point. If the dice changed, it would feel weird, even if it was still a percentile style thing, you know, because D20 is basically just a percentile. I think that it would feel funny. Like, someone would be like, you're still rolling the same stuff, just with different polyhedrals. And it's like, yeah, but it's not a D20. Just, like, there's something about that feel with, it's like if somebody tried to play D20 or play D&D without regular D&D dice.
Right.
It would just feel awkward. And I think that's the same thing. Now, as far as Warzone Resurrection's tactics cards, I can say, and I know that this is going to be a topic that people are probably going to comment on. I am never a fan of gotcha mechanics in a game. I don't like where someone has something tucked away up their sleeve, and I can change where your tactics, the quite opposite of what they do. It's no longer, it's not about tactics. It's about, I got a random draw that was better than yours. And that takes away from the strategy, and that takes away from the tactics of the game, in my opinion. So generally speaking, unless Alex looked at me and said, hey, I want to introduce an alternate, add in tactics cards as something that people can use, down the road, or unless I was asked to do so by the client, generally speaking, I'm not going to include a random or a semi-random gotcha factor. Especially in a game where we already are trying to have each figure be tactically sound on the battlefield. I don't want to have something off the battlefield that the players have no control over suddenly go, hey, that thing that you've been working towards, aside from the random factor of dice, because that you can't get around, I've got this thing up my sleeve. I can see, I can see what you're doing, and I've been watching you for 2 rounds, and you've been set up for this thing, and then, haha, I've got this card that says no. I've never been a fan of that. It's actually my least favorite part of 40K too, is the command point strategy gotcha stuff. So to answer you, Owen, yes, D20 based tactics cards, not unless I'm forced. If that makes sense. Next question is 2 questions from Charles Retro Z, which, by the way, is a really cool name. I don't know if, I'm sure that's probably not your real name, but if it is, you absolutely have to be at the head of like an 80s rap band. Like you are MC Retro Z. It says, what can you say to make the fans confident, quality-wise, on the company's ability to make a good quality range and have it well distributed and supported? His second question is also, what about various language translations? And these I kind of going to forward over to you, because it's more businessy type stuff than I'm equipped to answer.
Yep. So I'll jump on the second one first. So we've already started looking at partners for foreign language translation, or non-English translations. Again, I've been part of these online communities for years, even if I haven't been a vocal part of them, and I absolutely am aware of the fact that some of our most vocal and strongest, most passionate fans of this license, they come from places like Spain and Italy and Poland and France and Germany. This isn't an American game, right? The game was never, other than the fact that, right, we had the Target studio in Pennsylvania back in the days. The primary studio was in Europe. The designers were in Europe. The sensibility of a lot of the aesthetics came from Europe. So we 100% want those fans to feel like we're including them. Now, what a foreign translation looks like, I couldn't tell you, right? I don't know how quickly we'll be able to have alternate language rule books produced, physical rule books, right? I'm sure we can, not even sure, I know for a fact that we can have PDF versions out significantly quicker. But yeah, no, absolutely. Foreign translations are absolutely part of the rollouts.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
In regards to the first question, right? That's a really difficult one. What can I tell you to say? You should feel confident that we're going to have a high quality range that's sustainable over time. My primary answer, my first answer, and this isn't intended to be flippant at all, I have no desire to make poor quality figures. Right. The point of making these, of bringing this back, was to, to put it in a kind of a nutshell, it's to take those Paul Bonner images and finally give us a set of miniatures that look exactly like the Paul Bonner images. Right. The Target sculpts from the 90s, while they might have been more driven by that design, they didn't capture it at all. stuff that was produced later by Protos went in a very different direction. While you could still see a lot of the same inspirations, aesthetically, they came from a very different place.
Yeah.
So I want to produce figures that look like the artwork from the books in the entire Mutant Chronicles RPG range, Warzone First Edition. That's what we're going for.
But with
yes,
a new version, like slightly, like using the new technology to make those models come together in a better way. So perhaps we can get a tiger dragon that I don't hate.
You and I will debate that one.
This is an inside joke. I've commented to Alex before that there's a particular piece of art from the cover of one of the Warzone books that has a tiger dragon with the derpiest look on his face, and he's wearing the giant Tupperware armor, and it's just not. It does not speak to me. And I told him, I was like, it'd be really cool if we got new Tiger Warriors, huh?
So, to which I said, yes, we will have new sculpts.
Again, but I do digress. I'm sure with the new technology and the way things have been moving with artists and sculptors, that they'll be able to make something fantastic that doesn't look as derpy as that guy does.
That is,
for people who don't know, I'm going to put up the derpy one right now.
No, it's a stellar image.
So there you go. We'll let you guys choose in the comments. You can say whether or not maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm alone in the room.
But I just said to finish up the second part of that first question. In terms of confidence that we're going to be around. Again, right? We've engaged in the business analysis that's necessary to understand how do we continue this as a going venture for a long period of time. We're already partnered with manufacturers for the production of the figures. Resnova is really fortunate in that we've got really tight relationships with U.S.-based distributors. So I mean that already puts us ahead of where a lot of small companies coming out would be.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, right, we've seen what other kind of long-growing, organically growing, smaller evergreen companies are able to do. And it's easy to look at Games Workshop and say, well, are you going to be Games Workshop? But I think just as quickly, right? You get past Games Workshop, you have Privateer, Corvus Belli, and Weird, but even below them, you have companies that are producing games like Shinobi or not Shinobi, Bushido, and the Wild West Exodus and Dust, right? I mean, you have a bunch of smaller games where the company is not over investing too quickly. And therefore, they're able to grow at this organic rate, and they're able to sustain that growth to ensure that they're going to be around for a long time.
Yeah.
So what I would ask, right, is that fans who are interested in this, they recognize the approach that we're taking, and they're compassionate towards that. They're understanding of that, and they and a lack of monthly releases for every faction doesn't somehow indicate a failure by Resnova to support this game.
And hopefully, if all goes well and all tracks well, we should at least be able to kind of give people a heads up, to note what's coming soonish, rather than maybe not necessarily like detailing it down to the quarter, but basically being like, hey, this is coming, it's on the way, and that way they at least have that. Because I know one of the things that tripped up some of the past license holders is promising a lot and sadly never being able to deliver for whatever reason. And I think that as long as we are honest and say, hey, this is the stuff that we've got set up and you're going to get that
right
soonish, if you have to wait a couple extra months or whatever, as long as they know that it's in transit or in creation or up, even if they see them updated, like one of those, hey, this exists, check this guy out, like I think that most gamers for with some notwithstanding, that they understand that a smaller company has hurdles to get through. Like you said, you're not Games Workshop, you're not Privateer, who have the $1 million slush fund that they can dip into if they need to. When Games Workshop reports its profits, they a bad year for them is only an $8 million profit.
Right.
And that's not something that a smaller company really can do. And I think a lot of gamers, most gamers know that. There's always going to be some vocal few that won't. That it's like, why don't I have my 5th Imperial Trencher Skull?
Well, I mean, and that's with Games Workshop. I think you're right. That I think a lot of people do recognize that. But at the same time, these numbers are not widely publicized. There is a fair amount of opacity in the hobby industry as to what companies are actually doing. Yeah. And so Games Workshop is so far removed from where other companies are that, like you just said, on a bad year, their profits are equivalent to the profits of every other miniatures gaming company out there combined.
Yeah.
I mean, they're at a level that it's
a Jack and the Beanstalk thing. They are literally the giant in the clouds.
Absolutely.
All the rest of us are on the ground.
Right.
Like and we can look up in the clouds and go, man, that's fantastic. We wish we could be up there. But They've had 30 years to grow their beanstalk and get their goose. Yep. There's a reason why they're on top. And I know a lot of people are like, that's defeatist, and but you don't try and take down the giant. You just try to make a damn good game.
Well, and that's exactly it. Again, like I said, the point is to make something that grows its own feet under it, carries it forward, keeps the license alive, and produces the quality sculpts that I want to see. And comparisons to competitors is it's just not even actually at the forefront of what Resnova is trying to do.
Good. Our next question comes from Nicholas Danielson. He asks if figures are, what material are the figures being made of and size, and will they be multi-part?
So again, this becomes one of those responses that Bryan alluded to earlier with, we're going to tell you what we intend, what we've started doing. These things could change. As of right now, working with the partner that we're working with, the figures will be plastic. Now, when I say plastic, I don't mean PVC. I mean plastic. But I also don't mean hips, right? We're not going to be able to, for who knows how long, do high-impact polystyrene on sprue in the same way that a company like Games Workshop does, or even a company like Weird with Malifaux. But they will be plastic. They will not be PVC. I've got production samples in hand for other figures that this company produces, so I'm absolutely confident in what I'm saying here. And then the other part is that yes, the intent is to make these customizable. And again, I just want to keep putting these qualifiers on it. Depending on the complexity of manufacturing, these things could change. But the intended release style is a box set for each one of the factions that contains a core body, right? So torso and legs of one particular style, one iconic style. So the easy one here, let's use Imperial. So you have the Mark III, it's not Tortoise, I can't remember what the name of it is, but the Mark III Imperial armor, and you've got the legs and the body of that. But then the shoulder pads will be separate, so that you can use either the Bloodbrae style curved ones or the Golden Lion style square ones. They will come with separate heads, so that you can have just berets or berets and goggles or gas masks or female heads. And then they will be socketed, not like it's socketed in the chest, but socketed, typically there'll be a cutoff point somewhere. and each of the 5 models in the box set will be posed slightly differently, and you will be able to put one of numerous different weapon options into that model, allowing you to build that same model from that box set a few different ways. Shotgun, submachine gun, assault rifle, sniper rifle, Gehenna Puker, LMG, HMG, RPG, those kind of and then typically at least one person with some sort of close combat variant, a chain ripper and a pistol. That would be an example of what a standard box set would be set up like. And we have, for each of the corporations, we have planned as part of the initial release, one box set that builds 2 different troop types. Meaning that when we start out, each faction, each corporation will effectively have 2 unit types available immediately.
Yeah. I think that's a good point of covering. Apparently one of my cats got in the studio. All right. We might have a furry invader if I'm not paying attention. All right. So last question from Nicholas is, are the game rules separate from the army lists? I don't know how to cover that because I don't know if we've actually discussed it, because we know that the game rules themselves are going to be here is the rule set, and that I know when it's coming to the designing of the units and such, we've got them on a different listing. But are you wanting to have like like the first couple of waves of models in the first rule book, or is it going to be like an online resource? What are we thinking?
Yes. So that the rules will include army building rules in it, right? So that you understand that this is how you go and you put together your warband, or not your warband, but your unit for the tabletop. But as of right now, the presumption is that we're not going to have full army book selection in the rule book.
Okay.
Number of reasons for that, right? Number one, FAQs and errata come out and they change stat lines, and we want to be flexible and responsive to that, so that we can quickly pivot to making a unit have newer rules without invalidating the set of rules that a brand new player who knows nothing about Warzone might have picked up that rule book and knows nothing about FAQs or errata, and so they're playing with a set of rules that we've decided were wrong or incorrect or unbalanced. And then there's also just the cost of it, right? So you take your rule book and now you've made it more than double in length because you include the army list for every faction in it. So there's 2 primary motivations for not doing that. The alternative, we don't know. We started talking about, ideally we would like to have an Army Builder app, right? Something you can download to your phone, has all of the units in it, and then would also allow us to include some sort of, narrative there discussing the unit type. It could be, an online, Army overview with descriptions of the various unit types on there. We haven't figured that out, but I would presume at this point that you're not going to see army lists in the rulebook.
Okay, it's easy to know. Our next 2 questions come from Alfie Warzone, which again, I doubt that's your real name, Alfie. It says, will you be able to field several Ronin or Trenchers in the same list? Will there be several sculpts for the same unit? Well, first off, you're never going to field Ronin and Trenchers in the same list. They work for different companies. What are you doing, Alfie? Your last name is Warzone. But yes, we just covered that you're going to be able to have, you might have a trencher with a heavy machine gun and a trencher that is set up for throwing grenades and a trencher that is all geared up for stabbing people with his bayonet or whatnot in the same list, if that's how you choose you want to build your force. Yep. There's going to be a lot of flexibility, but not so much flexibility that you come to a game and you sit across the field from the guy who's got 8 heavy machine guns.
Right.
We're definitely working in a progressive point system that if someone starts to, as the kids say, spam things in their lists, they'll get penalized for it. Their list will not be, they sure, they can do it, but their list is not going to be as diverse, and their list is not going to be as, frankly, they're not going to have the same kind of quantity of soldiers that you have if they pack it full of the same one-trick pony again and again and again.
Right.
And then as the game progresses, we were talking earlier about what's in that kind of initial launch, the corporations and such. The way the game is designed is both sides. When you come to a battle to play, you end up on one side of good or evil, basically the light or the darkness. And as we see things progress and more models come out, and we start seeing a trickle in from things like the cartel and the brotherhood, and eventually other forces of darkness from the different apostles, you will have the ability to start kind of inserting little things into your force that maybe aren't necessarily directly from your list, but will still add to your full feel of what you're doing. So yeah, you can totally pack it full of trenchers, pack it full of Ronin, but not both, and go crazy. But if you decide to, like, you find like that one thing that you really want, like, I want to put as many flamethrowers as I possibly can in this force, there's going to be a limit before you reach maximum flamethrowing potential, if that makes any sense. We already covered the several sculpts because you just talked about sculpts.
Yep.
Alfie also asks, will you be able to equip a particular mini with different weapons, or do you use the mini that is sculpted with that weapon? Also covered.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, there's going to be some instances that there are models that, there are certain models that we see that only really have one weapon choice, but that's not something that we're really thinking about at the moment, because really initially we're trying to focus on getting models into the field, not necessarily here's this like one-off special guy that only has this one thing. That's something that we can tackle once the game is moving and people start going, hey, I want that one guy with that one thing. Ian Haley Nelson, which is perfect, is a great name, by the way. Like, that's a very proper name. Ian Haley Nelson. It just ask very simply the longevity of the game. I'm not going to put words in Alex's mouth, but hopefully a really long time, and profitably so.
Yeah. No, again, I mean, the desire here is to create a game that brings this property back to new players, provides new content, new material, new toys to play with for longtime players, and we have no desire to go anywhere, right? So I realize this is not what you're asking, right? I'm not trying to be snarky here. Like, we intend to be around as long as possible, and as long as we're producing stuff, obviously, that people like, we should be able to achieve that.
Awesome. Sebastian Crenshaw.
Mortificator?
Seems weird that you're just using your regular name on Facebook. It's not very mortification. It asks, is the focus of the game going to be the direction of a small game type like Kill Team or Warcry, with the possibility of expanding in the future to a larger table size and number of units? That I have a feeling that you've either heard me say this before, or you are Sebastian Crenshaw, and you're setting me up for a fall, because I'm pretty sure that's almost word for word what we said. We're kind of is the goal is start small, start fun, start tight rules, start small skirmish, and should things progress and do well, and Res Nova starts, frankly, because I'm not actually in the company, I can say these things. When they start bringing in the big Warzone bucks, then they have a reason to expand, and make that game larger. Now, me personally, this is me separating myself from the design, the contracted designer. This is me just saying, I know I would like to get up to a larger game with some small vehicles and some big critters. I mentioned earlier the Biogiant is one of my favorite things, and I am designing these rules with that in mind, but it is not penalizing the smaller game to do so. And I want you to I want to be 100% sure you guys know that, is that the rule set is not being designed with this giant game in mind, and that's, so when you play with a smaller skirmish force, that you're like, man, I'm missing out on all this stuff. You are still going to have an awesome game. I just want to make sure the rule set is tight enough that when things escalate and when things get larger, there's not a giant hiccup in learning new tactics and new strategies. So I want to be abundantly sure that that's where my design brain is I would like this game to go bigger and get huge, and us, stand on a stage somewhere raising our Warzone trophies. But until that dream is fulfilled, it is designed to be a smaller functional game.
Yep. Now, and one of the things that you and I talk about all the time, right, is this concept of future-proofing our designs. And so, yeah, I mean, what we are creating at this point right now is a very tight, very compelling skirmish miniatures game. Partially it's selfishly driven in that design. I'm a middle-aged dad with 2 kids and a full-time job. My time to play games has really fallen off in recent years. So games that you mentioned, like Kill Team or Warcry, there's an appeal there because you can sit down, you can get a full-fledged miniatures gaming experience in a short period of time. It also allows you to pivot really quickly, decide, hey, I want to try a completely different faction, because you only have to paint up a handful of figures. But at the same time, we're very observant of what Warzone traditionally was, which is kind of this platoon-level game, right? A couple squads, some cattail, a couple squads, some vehicles, small vehicles. We know that that's what the game traditionally has been. So we're future-proofing our rules such that we can evolve from this really tight skirmish set, using the same core rules, move up to this next stage of miniatures gaming without having to scrap or redo all of the peripherals that we've created for the smaller version of the game.
Are you satisfied, Sebastian? You're not going to come get us in the night? All right. Gomez Ignacio asks, will the game keep the resources and AP/actions system? So not as it is currently envisioned, but it is definitely a game based off of actions. Your models get to do X number of things per round, and X number of things on your opponent's round, depending on who they happen to be. So yes and no, not the exact same system that you have currently with some of the older versions, but it is still an action-based system, and there will be an economy that you will want to keep track of. Certain models are, if they have this particular trait, they might be able to do something a little different than someone else with their actions. But yeah, it is still an action-based system. It's not just everybody gets one go or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the resource question might have been a reference to Warzone Resurrection. And, as Bryan mentioned earlier, we're not going to use, the separate deck of cards.
Gotcha.
Cards. So
Gomez also asks, what is the size of the battlefield, and what should the percentage of scenography, which personally, that is such a great word. I don't know if it's a translation thing, but scenography is a super cool word. I'm going to use it it's now officially, I'm yoinking it. It's mine.
Yeah.
And what should the percentage of scenography is needed to play? I know that we are kind of our general view right now is a 3x3, 3 foot by 3 foot, or 1 meter by 1 meter if you are trying to use metric-y stuff, but we are not measuring things in metric. And then as far as percentage of scenography, I think currently what we've been shooting for is like roughly 60 to 70%. We want it to be pretty thick, because part of the fun of the game is ducking back and forth. It's almost like a game of paintball. You don't want to just be on this open flat ground where everyone can just shoot each other, because then your game's over in like 2 minutes. Not to mention, we have added specific terrain-based rules. So we want people to quit eating my plant, cat. Hey, yeah, meow. Sorry. We want people to build their own really cool Warzone feeling terrain structures. And so there's actually an entire chapter, or rather an appendix in the rulebook currently, that tells you how to build your terrain features. You know, as far as like, if you want to build a big pile of quicksand, it has these traits. If you want to do a filthy industrial complex, you do this. And so we want you to build awesome, cool terrain. One of the things, this is a little bit of a sidetrack. One of the things that bothers me to no end is, unless a game is designed for it, like it's a grid-based, map-based game or something like that, where you're sitting, like when people use like felt cutouts for this green splotch are my trees, or this gray piece of cardboard, that's actually a 10-story building.
Right.
I'm not saying you should build a 10-story building or that you should go out and spend $100 on Games Workshop trees, but part of the game is the immersion in what you're doing. And when I've gone to tournaments and I've seen like just rows upon rows of tables that have no terrain, but instead just a bunch of felt circles on them and blobs and things, and they're like, that's the terrain for our game because terrain is irrelevant except for like this one rule that it applies. I hate that. So our terrain rules are not like crazy in depth, like, you gotta spend an hour reading about how to use this building, but it is going to, you should have an idea of what everything that you put on the battlefield, hopefully to make it a cooler and more immersive game, but they also should do something. Even if it's just blocking bullets from your opponent, they should all do something. You should never, your opponent should not point at a piece of terrain and go, what's that do? And you go, eh. Yep. You should at least know it does something.
Yeah, I mean, that was in regards to the, making the terrain have a narrative role as well. I mean, as much as I loved, first edition Warzone, there always was a slight disconnect in the fiction, the story that you would have in the short stories, little snippets that, like Matt Forbeck and the like wrote there, or in the RPGs, and then the scale of the game of Warzone, right? What we want is to start again with this skirmish version. We want to create a game that evokes those stories, right? So your games are going to be set in the streets of Luna, in the dense jungles of the Graviton Archipelago, in the caverns of Mercury. So, I mean, those are all places where the terrain is dense because you're not rolling tanks through there. Yeah. This is a place where your elite strike force of, corporate troopers or, Dark Legion cultists are moving in to accomplish some objective. And so, yeah, I think Bryan is absolutely right. 60% plus table coverage is really what we've been anticipating.
Sean Briault asks, will Resnova be siding more with the older styles, Paul Bonner, Simon Bisley, Peter Berting, and most likely more hero scale due to the shoulder pads, ammo pouches, etc., that we saw in early Target Games editions of the game, or are they looking for more of a true scale, realistic, modern style a la Protoss? I think we covered that earlier as far as like what we're shooting for, but I do think this might be a good place for us to, if someone who's stuck with us this long through the Q&A, give them a little teaser.
Sure.
So Alex gave me a picture, a render of a blood beret. And so we're going to go ahead and put that up here for you guys to see. Pretty cool. I mean, it's a basic dude, but you can tell that it is, like, you can look at the older blood. You know what? I'll find a picture of an old blood beret and I'll put it up right now. And so now you compare those two shots together, same idea, same concept, same soldier, but the newer sculpting technologies, the new rendering technologies it looks like that guy could run around and do soldiery stuff, whereas the older Target Games metal figure looks like if he shrugged, he'd decapitate himself. No one says I don't know in the Warzone world because they're dead. Your head box. So I think that's I hope that answers Sean's question, that we want that old feel but new style.
Yep, exactly right. I know I've had a few conversations with people in the past, and I strongly disagree with the idea that by producing modern sculpts, it somehow means that you have to abandon the classic imagery.
Yeah.
What I hope is that this figure, or that render and our future figures demonstrate that we can absolutely create these heroic scaled figures that are not grossly misproportioned, and without having to move to a very, as they described it, realistic proportion in order to create a nice model. And the other thing I would, quick caveat I'd put on there is that prototype, or that blood beret right there, was a prototype. That is the very first model that we started working on to establish a sense of scale. So the blood berets that are going into production look slightly different than that. Obviously, you notice there's no separate shoulder pads, there's no separate head. That was actually going to be the figure that, had Adepticon happened, was going to hand out. But again, something got in the way there. So
yeah, this whole virus thing.
Yep.
So I also want to say that, keep in mind that like the Space Marine, or the Primaris Marine now, to avoid trademark issues, has not really changed in 30 plus years. The shape of the helmet, the different sizings of everything, but like the actual, like what they are, hasn't really changed in 30 years. But yet every time new models like that come out, everyone's like, oh my god, they're amazing. And if you go back and look at point out some of those old like Beaky Marines, yeah, they're really not great because it was the technology at the time. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do here, is the technology at the time has moved forward enough that we can take those old concepts and really imagine them in a new way that makes them look really good on the tabletop. Yeah. Not to mention, I also people have been saying this in the last 5-10 years, just tabletop painting has gotten so much better. The skills and the practices and the resources that people have out there, this is going to be a prettier game just for the sheer fact that people have gotten better at the art aspect of not to like down the people who painted the stuff for the old Target games, but they just, that was a different era. And you look at some of the award-winning paint jobs that you see now, and look back at the award-winning paint jobs like Golden Demon winners in the late 90s, they're laughable, the difference. And it's not because people like those guys weren't good. They were amazing. It's just paint has gotten better and easier to use. New brushes, new technology of primers. It's just, there's new skills that have become widespread, that like some guy in his basement was like, I can't believe I'm the only one that does this. Well, now he's not. And right. I think that's going to lead, like people are going to see these new models, and with a really slick paint job on them, they're going to be like, man, these are damn fine figures no matter what. And so I think that's going to be a big push too, personally. All right. Jeremy Nelson asks, will we get a beta test of rules? I couldn't answer this one because I know I've got a crew of playtesters that are helping me make things go together, hopefully. But I didn't know if we were doing any kind of outside beta or anything like that. That was something I kind of wanted to put in your direction.
Sure. Yeah, no. So our playtesting is going to be, larger than, the group, the Bryan's mentioning, right? Those are his close, immediate testers that he can bounce ideas off of. We do have a larger pool of playtesting groups right now that are representing a lot of the individuals who've reached out to me on Facebook. I doubt that we're going to do a fully open beta. Part of the reason is we're just not scaled in order to meaningfully input all of the comment
data.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that, and then the other one is pushing a document out for public consumption. Opens up the opportunity for a fair bit of criticism without any actual engagement, right? Like, we need people who are playing the game, who are running through it pursuant to the play testing, package that Bryan and I have put together. So that they understand this is what the objective is of this playtesting round. This is what we need you to take a look at. Comment back on this. Now, that being said, right, our rules there's still a very good chance that our rules are going to be made just generally freely available. So the opportunity to take a look at the rules before you've purchased them or decide to jump into the game, the ability for us to, like I mentioned earlier, quickly pivot so that we can include revisions based upon community consideration. There will no doubt be an FAQ and errata team that will look at these things. But yeah, I'm not going to say for sure, no way are we doing an open beta, but in all likelihood, probably not.
Okay. Elias Papadopoulos, I'm practicing that one, asks, he asked something that we already answered, and then he asks, how and when will the game launch? Will it be a Kickstarter?
So at this point right now, the presumption is yes, a Kickstarter, for a number of reasons, right? The first one is obviously it helps defray the production costs. Resnova is moving into an area where we don't have a history of doing this, right? So there's a fair amount of startup costs that we're going to be incurring. The other one is, and this is a significant one, that I think this is a reason why a lot of companies who don't need the Kickstarter funds choose to do Kickstarter, and that's just because of the inherent marketing that comes with being on Kickstarter, right? There are a number of third-party sites that actively monitor new gaming Kickstarters, and they push the information out. It gives you something to point people at when you're doing various social media engagements. You can say, we've talked about this game, now here it is over here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of value to it, using Kickstarter just for that purpose. Now, what I can say for sure is we're not going to Kickstarter when we've had 0 miniatures sculpted. We're not going to Kickstarter without a final set of rules. I mean, at this point right now, Bryan has effectively developed out the core design into a fully playable game. It's going to go through playtesting all throughout the summer and the fall. By the time we do a Kickstarter, presuming that that's what we do, the rule book will be written. Artwork might still need to be added to it. The sculpts, the molds might need to be made, but we should be on track to have the actual digital sculpts done for all 5 mega corporations by this fall. And if that's the case, then by the time that we kickstart this sometime in 2021, like I know we've mentioned a few times on Facebook, it's really literally just giving us the money to pay for producing the figures and recouping the investment that Resnova
hit that big green button.
Yeah.
Ryan Chamberlain asks, which of the 3 Warzone books most closely fits with the vision for the game? Now, I think that he meant the 3 novels, like 3 primary novels, but I'm not 100% sure. He may also have meant like Target,
Excelsior Protos.
But I think we've covered the idea of what the vision is. So Ryan, if you're listening, I didn't want you to think that we skipped your thing. If it is about the novels, like if there's a particular novel that you're like, we hope that we really focus on, hit us up on Facebook. Let's talk more about that. I put a star next to your question because I want to know more of what you're thinking.
Sure.
If that makes any sense. Like your question intrigues me. This is a hard one. Averkios Avi Karalis? If I totally butchered it, please don't hate me. You had several questions. Like you were a question hound, and I even cut some of them out, but you had a bunch of really good ones that I think are relatively easy to answer.
Yep.
Do you have an approximate on how many units per faction we're looking for?
So to launch, it should be 2 unit types per corporate faction, and then Elgaroth as the apostle with Undead Legionnaires, Necromutants, and not entirely settled yet on which of the big guys.
It sounds like there might be some scattered weirdness, and if this is a Kickstarter, if it does really well, that will probably change what that initial bump will be as well. I mean, one would
very possibly, but again,
yeah.
Given that we don't want the Kickstarter to be promising stuff that we haven't already started making.
Number one problem with miniature Kickstarters is promises the world and then underdelivers.
Right. So we're hesitant to include stretch goals that would mean figures that need to be sculpted and produced that we just haven't even begun on.
Avrikios' next question is, for starters, what is the biggest size the game will go for? I think he was talking about like size of like number of models, but I'm going to switch it up because we've already talked about it's going to be a skirmish level game, and we are actually looking for the size of the model. And although I would love to have gigantic dudes, right out of the gate, it really wouldn't be any fair. It wouldn't be fair to have, Biogiants and Ezoghouls running around all over little squad-based skirmish game. So initially, after we get like a wave or two of releases, you'll probably see, obviously we want to get some of the Dark Legion nasties that are a little bigger than humans.
Yep.
And some of the Cybertronic toys are a little bigger than people. And honestly, if you think about it, there's almost every faction's got something that's just a little bit bigger than people that isn't like gigantic super mecha that still could fit in if you decided to dedicate those resources to it. So I know that's probably not what you asked for, but that's the tease that I wanted to give. Can you build your dudes with varying weapons? Oh, we already covered that. I don't know how that snuck through. Yes. What's the game duration you want to initially aim for? All right, now that's actually that's something I can answer right now. So currently during playtest games with someone who is not necessarily a full-blown war gamer, but is a good like a good starting out gamer that understands rules, I've been able to get games in about an hour and a half. And have felt pretty confident about it. I think that when at this initial level, I think that as the game grows, obviously it's going to take more time to get game turns in and things, and as you get more choices to field on the battlefield, you might extend a little bit because of models being able to do different things. But I think for the most part, barring someone really taking a really long time to do everything, I can't see most games being longer than 2 hours. And that's really and that's people dragging their feet, in my opinion. I think the game moves very quickly, and like we said, it is still a skirmish-based game, which means you have a low model count initially. So for the most part, unless you're really overthinking every single move, it should move pretty fast. It should go pretty quickly.
That's something that we'll continue working on, obviously, through playtesting, because the goal is to get for the most basic, smallest skirmish level version of the game. We want to get it as close to an hour as possible. Again, the idea is being able to set up figures, move them around, play the game, and get it done.
And some of that right now is because this whole coronavirus thing has our playtesters not in places where they can get together and play. Right. So we're limited in who actually can get together and play these rules initially. And so I do think that as people become as the playtesters get more familiar with things, as the people who are helping me kind of smooth out the rules hiccups, Because that's also something that happens during the middle of a game is, something happens and we kind of pause to talk about what's going on. So I think that eventually that hour, that hour kind of time frame for the basic game, I don't think that'll be hard to reach at all. I just think that the current, because everything's still sort of in motion and still progressing, that's why we're getting the longer games at the moment. And then of course, again, if you play bigger, just like any other miniatures game out there, if you choose to play larger games, that's on you. Like not to be like, we told you, but it's, if you put more stuff on the field, you got more stuff, you have more moving parts, it's going to take longer.
Yep,
just how it is. We covered this earlier. Do you plan on adding all the apostles in one go, or give room for development to then shoot them in the rest of it during expansions? And you had mentioned earlier that the War Cult of Algaroth is the first part.
Yep.
And I know I'm eager to sink my teeth into the rules of the other apostles, but that is definitely not something that is right on deck. We'll get to them. It would be a absolute mistake to not add in how awesome some of those other, even just the way that they do battle.
Right.
It'd be a mistake to not include them at some point. But as you said earlier, with us not having army lists as part of the main rule book and something that we can release electronically and then through the stat cards that come with models and things like that, we can release that whenever we need to, or whenever we feel confident that the market can handle it, that we can handle it, that Resnova can handle it, that everything's good to go. Then that's the kind of thing that, maybe two apostles happen at the same time, or whatever. Who knows? That the future is yet to be written. But because Resnova is covering this in a way that the releases are not structured so rigidly that it's like, okay, this quarter we've got this apostle, and this quarter this apostle, and this quarter, it's going to be something that we'll be able to judge based off of the popularity of the game, sales. If Dark Legion outsells everything, right off the bat, I'm willing to bet that Alex probably will be poking me in the ear and being like, "Hey, let's take a look at Demnogonus. Let's get some Huawei. Let's get them out there, because obviously there's a fan base for it." But yeah, I don't. There's no plan. So of July 5th, 2022, the Apostles strike or anything like that. That's not that I've been told anyway.
Yep. No, I think you're absolutely correct there.
Last one from Averkios is, do you aim that each corporation specializes in one thing, or is it a bit more flexible? I can say with all confidence that they are very flexible. They have something that they're really good at. You'll be able to focus your tactics using kind of the knowledge that you have. But as the game grows, you're also going to get more unit types that might have slightly altered skills, things like that. But I know that the corporations, if we want to stay with the narrative, because we don't want everybody to be just different versions of the same generic thing. That's boring. If I wanted all of my pieces to do the same stuff, I go play chess. We want this corporation to have a different feel from this corporation, to have a different feel from this guy, and so forth and so on. And then on the other side of the coin, the apostles should all have a different feel as well. They should play the game slightly differently.
Right.
And I think that without making it gruelingly punitive, like one of those, well, Bauhaus, they're super good jungle fighters because they're from Venus and that's what they're at. We don't want to make them so good at it that every time you fight Bauhaus, well, guess what kind of terrain that guy's setting up? You You want to have them have the skills to be able to do cool stuff that's Bauhaus in feel, but not necessarily the only one that can do those things.
Right. Yep. No, absolutely. There's a fine balance between making everybody feel completely generic and the same from corporation to corporation, and creating a set of rules to distinguish them that ends up just making them feel super gamey. Yeah. And it's trying to get somewhere there in the middle. And yeah, I mean, when you start out, right, a human soldier is a human soldier. And so you're starting from the parameters that narrative permits. But yeah, no, absolutely. Every faction has some unique trait to it, and even the units within each faction are slightly different from the other one. Especially, for the starting faction or starting unit types, each of the two units that a box set can build, they play slightly differently to create a reason to choose one over the other.
Yeah. Or mix and match. I think that's another thing, because of the way that Alex is planning on doing these minis. Is if you buy a box, it doesn't mean that well, these are 5 blood berets. You're going to be able to mix and match and be like, I want to have this particular guy from the Golden Lions. I really want their close combat specialist. I dig the way that guy fights. And then that's fine. Then they have the other 4 guys be blood berets, or vice versa or whatnot. Yeah, so I think that's and as the game expands and you get more units out there, you will be able to see that corporate feel on a larger scale. Because I think that's the other thing, is that right now we're only looking at a couple of units, and it isn't fair to kind of say that these 2 units embody everything that is that corporation, because there is so much out there that has been written for us to then turn into our version of those units. We've got a lot of work to do to make everything kind of fit together, but we know what we're shooting for. We know there's a corporate slogan over each faction, so to speak, and we know where that's supposed to go in. Maybe if you looked at this particular unit, you might not see it, but on the overall, you're going to go, oh, okay, I get it. Next 2 questions. We're getting down to the wire. We've got now, if this is your real name, no one beats you up at school. Thanos Delamagus. I'm hoping that's like legitimately he's a Thanos. Like he grew up, like his parents were comic book fans. Are we going to see some of the most iconic characters like Valerie Duvall, Mitch Hunter, Sebastian Crenshaw? No, Crenshaw is on Facebook too much. He's out. Sean Gallagher, Vince Diamond, etc., making their way back to our boards at day 1. And now I know we talked a little bit about this because it's still kind of up in the air, the eventual.
Yeah, eventual, but no, not at day 1. The point is to create, since we're playing a small skirmish game to start with, the idea is to try to enable you to create these stories where every one of your guys, your free Marine with his Deathlock drum, he is a character, right? Because he's able to do these cool things on the battlefield. That being said, you're absolutely right. Those are iconic characters, and the game wouldn't be complete without including that. So every one of those guys, in some form, will eventually make their way to the battlefield. They're not necessarily going to be these significantly superior versions of other model types. Mitch Hunter is not going to be the greatest Polaris Trident that you're able to choose from. But he's going to have a set of skills and perhaps a weapon loadout that makes him unique, that he plays differently than an officer from the Polaris Trident units when we eventually get around to producing those. He would play differently than that. So yes, we absolutely intend to introduce those characters, but that is down the road. We have plans for how those guys would get introduced, in what form and how frequently. But that's not part of the first wave rollout at all.
And not to mention, for the game purposes, but narratively speaking, they do exist, and you're probably going to see them referenced in stories, as referenced
sure.
in
Yep.
they'll be quoted as, so they're definitely out there in the world. They're doing their thing. They're just not part of the game as of yet.
Yep, exactly.
Patrick Groshon says, do you plan to make all the different zombies? And then he went on in parentheses to name a bunch of zombies.
Yes, we will have Screaming Legionnaires and Blessed Legionnaires, and what is the? Oh, it's Alien doesn't have any, so I don't remember which ones I'm missing right now.
I know he included cadavers and so like not even just the raw like Undead Legionnaire variants, but like some of the other kind of monster cultists as well.
So I mean that would be so the Legionnaires, right? The variant Legionnaires that each of the apostles have. Again, understanding that Ilian doesn't have those in the background. All of those will come out. Those will be part of the core releases for each of those future apostles. Beyond that, things like Last Rightsmen and Cadavers, maybe, right? Like even if you go back and look at first edition Warzone, the distinction between a Cadaver and an Undead Legionnaire, I don't know how wide of a difference there are to even warrant them being in there. But again, those are down the road. Those are all options for us, and we will address those when it's ripe.
Very cool. Patrick also asks, do you plan on making interactivity with the Undead and Dark Legion leaders like in Warzone Resurrection? So, to be fair, since I haven't played Warzone Resurrection, I can't say that it would be like that or not, but I can say that the rules that we have set up are designed so the Dark Legion big baddies can help their Undead Legionnaires function better on the battlefield. Right. Because generally speaking, the Undead Legionnaires are less than stellar, as you would expect. They're meat sacks. They're animated by evil math. So one would expect that they're not fabulous. But if I include this model that might have some additional things that it can do on its turn to make these guys cooler, to get them to react in different ways, to make them function on a higher level. And this is just right now, we've only really looked at the War Cult of Algaroth. We're not even really talking about some of the other facets.
Right.
I mean, we get into things like the Screaming Legionnaires and was the Dark Huntsman is Semize?
No, the Heretic Legionnaires.
Heretic Legionnaires, thank you. We're not even talking about what those guys might have. They might have a completely different set of rules than what these current Undead Legionnaires have, because what we're dealing with are just the meat sacks that are being animated by Algaroth's war engine. Right. So that might change as things come by, but what I can tell you is that the idea of the Dark Legion's upper echelons affecting their troops and making their stuff do better is not something that's lost on me. Right. Because you want that pyramid, you want that structure, that leadership structure, because it also is a cross tactic for your opponents to try and take down the big guys to weaken your structure. I mean, like it's part of gameplay. So yeah, is it going to run like how Warzone Resurrection does it? I have absolutely no idea, but it's going to do what you intended to do. Our last set of questions come from Miguel Mancini, and the first one is super big. It's a very, very wordy. Why should people pick up the new Warzone when there are Kill Team and Warcry, backed by the #1 company in the industry, Malifaux with what is supposedly an extremely polished rule set, Star Wars Legions with the appeal of a massively beloved universe, or even Infinity, a reasonably big established game that presumably scratches the same skirmish itch? That's a big question, but I felt that
is a big question.
That's a deep question, and it is a very well thought out question of why people should come to the new Warzone.
Sure. So I think there's I think it depends on who the person is, right? So when it comes to somebody who's an established fan of the IP, the reason you would come to it is because it's another opportunity to dive back into this world that you love. It's true to the classic imagery that perhaps drew you into the game and the universe many years ago. If you're somebody who's brand new to the universe, the world, Games Workshop or Privateer Press, these are your touch points for miniatures gaming. The reason would be for the same reasons that a lot of these people got pulled into it in the 90s, right?
Exactly.
The setting is awesome. There's a ton of really cool stories, yet it's not so far advanced in the future, and it's not such a fringe story that you can't find things that you identify with on a personal level, right? Corporations become something that people see, they like, they grab on a hold of one of them, and that's like how they define themselves as a Warzone gamer, right? So all of that really great lore and background and imagery is still there, coupled with what we hope are really awesome miniatures, a tight rule set that allows games to be completed quickly, yet not quickly because we've skimped on the ability to engage in tactical thought and decision making on the tabletop. And to be honest with you, right, what we're producing is a game that is intended to exist and live on its own, regardless of the fact that kill teams and Malifaux and everything else exist.
And that's actually what I wanted to say is I get questions like this a lot, and it is even from friends of mine. And I look at someone, and I don't know a single gamer that only plays one game.
Right.
And there is no reason, as long as the price point is right and you see the value in what you're buying. Like, you look at my garbage pile of stuff over here, and this is like one of 4 or 5 bookshelves plus closets plus a storage unit of games upon games upon games, and some of them I play pretty regularly. Even if I wasn't involved with the project, I would still buy into a new Warzone. The only reason I didn't play Protoss is I didn't know it existed.
Yep.
And that's, I think, where I see things where someone's like, why would you play this over Kill Team or Warcry? I've got my Warcry figures right there. I will play both.
I've always very much felt, right, that the gaming industry in general, but amongst the miniature producers out there, that there's always been a fair bit of actual good-natured camaraderie. And I think the industry is a heck of a lot stronger when there's a number of options out there.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I get what you're saying, and I would love to be able to say that what it is that we're creating is going to draw every single player away from every other game in existence. But that's not going to happen. So what we want to do is create a game that's compelling and is a desirable play experience, and that's the reason why you play it.
Yeah. And then his last question, which is kind of covered, sort of by maybe what we just said, I guess. So what's going to be the appeal from a player's point of view? And perhaps even more importantly, what's going to make the game succeed as a product that requires a competitive advantage, releases, and support? I'm going to throw my 2 cents in, and then I'm going to let you finish things out. I think the big thing is players are going to enjoy this, hopefully, because if they're an existing Warzone fan, is because it touches on that old nostalgic point where they will, even if they're remembering that the first time that they played Warzone for a different company, or even if they are putting down old models to play our game, that it is going to kind of rekindle that old spirit, the same things that got Alex and I super jazzed about when the game came out the first time. Is that hopefully they'll get that same kind of spark. And for new players, there is only the place for that spark. There is no negativity. There is no a bias for an old system. There's just new cool stuff that they might be able to see and play. And I think that talking about how a competitive advantage, releases and support, a lot of that really, not to sound, you said the word flippant earlier, but not to sound kind of like I'm sort of winking at the peanut gallery, but it's going to take you guys. We for it to be a competitive game, for it to be steady releases and things, we're going to need to see that that's required of us. We would like to hear back from you guys. We want to know that if it does go to Kickstarter, that the Kickstarter comments are hopefully primarily positive, that are, yeah, this is Warzone's back, we can't wait. When am I going to see an Attila 3? The excitement that we get from you guys, all that does is just fuel us further. Like when we hear the fans go, I had a friend that I hadn't talked to in probably 6 years, just because he moved away and we haven't really been in touch. When I did the video on Warzone, the little leak, he reached out to me and I was like, "Whoa, hey, how you doing?" And he goes, "You're bringing Warzone back?" I had no idea he ever played. It was just this random thing, but that momentary connection was enough for me to be like, I'm doing the right thing. This is awesome. And I think for the game to be competitive, that really comes down to how the people play it. Because you can play you can play competitive checkers. Like anything can be competitive. Now, I personally hope that the competitive does not lead to people being jerks. That's me personally. I've seen too many tournament mentalities out there that really kind of ruin it for everybody. But we aren't responsible for that. And I don't want to be like, I'm not trying to pass the buck, but as the designers, we try to make a game that plays well. We try to make a game that's fun and a setting that's fun, and the models that come out on time that are good and well put together. All we can do is set the stage as much as we can, and then hopefully what we hear back from you guys is that we've done a good job. Or if the critiques that you are giving back is, that's not to say, I'm not being like, hey, shut up if you have anything negative to say. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, like, if you do have critiques, if you do have, hey, maybe this should be different, or my local scene, everybody only plays these 3 same models again and again and again, well, that's something that we need to take a look at. And hopefully that we will be able to support the community in that way, because it's the 21st century and we have that ability now. Whereas, 20 years ago, they didn't have that. When Target Games, if someone was like, well, hey, the Brotherhood Mortificator, he's too good, he's killing everyone over and over and over again, they couldn't change that because there wasn't an online errata. It was the only way they could change that is that they put an extra page in the next book that came out in 6 months.
Yep.
So all I'm saying is, the appeal from a player's point of view is that it's going to be an awesome. I have a feeling that this is going to be an awesome game. It's already an awesome setting, and we're just basically taking something that's already fantastic and giving you a new way to enjoy it. And then, as far as for the game, what's going to make the game succeed? You guys. We are going to do everything we can to make the tools and get everything set up and have all of the ingredients for an amazing thing, but it's going to take you guys to really, really make it succeed. And that's my 2 cents. Alex?
Yeah, so I'll take a slightly different tact with the answer. When you ask about competitive, to the extent that you might be talking about how are we going to be competitive in the market, what I would again point out was, right, our intent is to create a game that stands on its own. We're not particularly concerned about competitors, simply because there are competitors that are far more entrenched than we are in the industry. Competitors that are already in stores, that are already on your painting table. We're not going anywhere. We're going to continue attempting to grow. As Bryan said, as long as you guys like what we're doing, that will create the base from which we can continue to build. We have a release schedule planned. Cabinet wouldn't have licensed this to us if we didn't have some some long-term plan for the next 5 years laid out as to what we intend to accomplish. We're going to, like I said, tap into all the relationships we have with distribution. We've already got we've got artists lined up. We've got sculpts being produced. We're going to continue moving this forward, and the intent is to make this as long growing and as evergreen of a property as we possibly can. The speed at which we grow will in part be determined by you guys, but again, as mentioned earlier, with the goal of never oversaturating our player base, never becoming a line that's so large that a retailer won't take a chance on us because there's simply too many SKUs to purchase. We think we've got it. We think we've got a plan. We believe it will work. But as Bryan says, this is dependent upon us making something that you guys, the kind of the core audience, enjoy. So, yeah, no, I think that's about it.
Awesome. Well, then we have been John for a while. Let's give these guys a chance to digest this information and then go hit the various Facebook groups and tell us how fantastic we are because we're staying positive. Yeah. I just want to say to Alex, thank you for coming on. This is my first time, aside from having a person in the studio with me, having a guest on. So this is really cool, and I for everybody out there, I am super psyched about this project, and it's not even just a personal thing. I think that you guys are going to be really excited when things come together. So a big thank you to Alex for coming out and answering some questions. Hopefully answer the questions that you guys had. And please, if you have anything else, where can they find you? If they need to if they want to ask you questions or try and get on that playtest team or anything like that.
Yeah, so I would say at this point right now, the best thing to do would be to ping us through or ping me through the Resnova contact email on Facebook. Right, there's a messaging service there.
What is that address? I'll go ahead and put it up on the screen for him.
So the Facebook contact. So go to the Facebook page.
Oh, okay.
For Resnova Games. Yep. So at Resnova Games, there's a contact there, and it'll shoot a message over to us. We don't have a website at this point. Until Dungeon Slayer hits Kickstarter, we're not going to be rolling out a formal online presence. We'll continue to rely on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for pushing out concept art, imagery. But really, any of those three platforms, feel free to reach out to us.
Well, fantastic, man. I guess that's pretty much it for me. If you guys, if you have anything, hit him up on one of those platforms. If you got anything for me, you can either comment on the video or you can hit me up at Bryan CP Steel just about anywhere, or on the TikTok at The Professional Nerd. So it's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely, Bryan. Appreciate you inviting me to the channel. Everyone take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. So there you have it. It was a great interview / Q&A / kind of fun chit chat session. It did go a little long as we expected, but it was well worth it. Hope we got a lot of good information out there. And who knows, as time progresses and the project moves forward, maybe we'll even get a chance to have another one of these down the road with more things that we could talk about and show off and whatnot. But no matter what, it was a lot of fun to have him on, and I'm actually going to see if I can't try and get a couple other guests to do that in the future. That was a neat thing to do for the show. So without further ado, let's let you get back to real life, or back to whatever you do on a when you're not listening to Tales from a Professional Nerd. And don't forget to leave any comments or any questions or anything like that in the comment section. or give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit the little bell if you want to make sure that you know new things that come from us down the road. But oh my God, I have to sneeze. What a way to finish a video. But either way, thank you for watching and sticking with us, and hopefully you got some good stuff out of it. And I want to leave us today, as I normally do, and tell everybody to go out, ignore all that stuff that's happening in the world right now, and just, maybe just set it on the back burner and give yourself a little time, give yourself reason to smile. Get out there, have some fun, and play some games. We'll see you next week.